Welcome to In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska. This is part 2 of the segment which we did earlier today. That is the Prespa Agreement as cultural genocide of the Macedonian national identity towards the termination of an illegal treaty by Prof.d-r Igor Janev. As we have indicated above, says the professor, all 4 steps in domestic constitutional procedure were in violation of rules regarding the process of signing it, referendum on the names change, procedure in the parliament, and finally, illegal signature of the Speaker of the Parliament. Speaker of the Parliament, instead of the presidential signature at the end of that procedure. First, according to Article 119 of the Macedonian Constitution, only the President of the Republic of Macedonia could sign important political treaties as primus with respect to treaties, and other less important treaties that may have diplomatic nature needed mandatory presidential involvement if the Minister of Foreign Affairs have jurisdiction to sign. Clearly, the agreement regarding the change of the state's identity needed a signature from the president, that is the President Georgi Ivanov, and his involvement, and that was not the case with the Prespa Agreement. After signing the Prespa Agreement by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, that is Dimitrov, as explained previously, when President Ivanov declared that he will not give a final presidential signature for anything coming or deriving from that act, since he didn't have any role or part in the negotiation of the Prespa Agreement or any other step before signing it by Minister of Foreign Affairs in Novici. The place was called Novici back in 2017. This should be 2017. There's a typing error. With respect to that apparently illegal situation where the Minister of Foreign Affairs had signed the Prespa Agreement instead of the President himself, Professor of Constitutional Law in the University in Skopje, Mrs. Tanya Karakamisheva commented, and we quote, "The law of ratification and execution of international agreements, regulation procedure, but also the law on foreign affairs, law on foreign affairs, both that precisely define the status of the foreign affairs minister as a government official regarding states' international relations. The laws that regulate authorization for concluding international agreements, as well as the entitlements of the foreign affairs minister in the process that precedes the act of the states committing to any treaty, provide the following. First, the President of the Republic has exclusive jurisdiction in the negotiation process, including the act of signing international agreements, which in case here have not included the numerous cause principle rules regulated in Article 3, Paragraph 2 in the law of conclusion. First, the President of the Republic has exclusive jurisdiction in the negotiating process, including the act of signing international agreements, which in case here have not included the numerous clauses, principles, rules regulated in Article 3, Paragraph 2 in the law for the conclusion, ratification and execution of the international agreements. Accordingly, this particular deed of the Minister of Foreign Affairs means that he undertook an action out of his jurisdiction. In other words, in its ultra vires act that violates the fundamental legal forms in the process of signing the international agreement. Second, the procedure for negotiating international agreements must be initiated by the President of the state. The decision for the inauguration of the negotiation process is made by the president, who takes the initiative whenever he thinks that the country should be a party to an international agreement. Also, there is another situation in which the president is empowered to make this decision if the majority of voters in the national referendum adopted the decision under the condition that more than half of the total number of voters cast their votes. Third, the president is to start a negotiation process on the conclusion of an international agreement if the assembly adopts a decision or if the proposal to start the negotiations comes from the government. And when a proposal originates from these instances, the final decision to begin with the negotiation process is made by the president. But in this case, in focus here, the act of negotiation was not taken under the statute entitlement, as the president was precluded from the negotiation process in the Prespa Agreement process. And the government did not have any authority to negotiate over the Prespa Agreement because the subject regulated by the treaty, that is the name of the country, Republic of Macedonia, do not comply with the provisions of Article 3, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution, which enumerate the fields in which the government could be active in this field. One should keep in mind that the state's name stems from the right of self-determination of the nations, which according to the international law have a status of EU's jus cogens norm. With respect to the Macedonian constitution norms, jus cogens norms in the domestic law hold a status of constitutional norms, albeit their origin is in the international law. Such international norms could be changed only by another legal norm with identical legal force and adopted in an adequate procedure. In other words, they may be altered only through another multilateral international agreement, but not through a bilateral agreement or constitutional amendments to any national constitution. Majority of constitutional law professors supported the view of Professor Tanya Karakamisheva, for instance, Professor Siljanovska, Professor Klimovsky, and most of other constitutional scholars in the Macedonian universities, and scholar from the presidency of Manu as the highest scientific authority in the country. Next, in the list of domestic violation known to Greeks too, in the step-by-step process regarding the Prespa Agreement is almost self-explanatory, says the professor, a referendum. Namely, referendum on the state's name change was unsuccessful. In any civilized country, that fact alone would entail executive decision to stop further process of constitutional changes, if only a prime minister or somewhere president had a minimum human dignity, says the professor. But that was not the case in Macedonia. More than 1 million people boycotted the referendum that required a turnout of 50% to pass of the total number of voters that turned out. More than 1 million people boycotted the referendum that required a turnout of 50% to pass the total number of voters that is the turned out. And that was not the case, since the turnout was less than 37% of the registered voters. In addition, we noted that the Prime Minister wanted to manipulate and mislead the people's will by hand-tailored and unclear referendum question, mixing the three into one question to obtain large number of supporters, voters for the EU, higher economic standard, wealth and prosperity. So the referendum question, that is the illegal, according to the Macedonian standards and contrary to the Venice Commission standards on referendum was, and we quote, "Are you for membership in the EU and NATO by accepting the agreement between the Republic of Macedonia and the Hellenic Republic?" End of quote. Apparently, a decision on a referendum and the question did not specify the full name of the agreement between the Republic of Macedonia that would be changed, and the Hellenic Republic that it's unclearly notes the agreement between the Republic of Macedonia and the Hellenic Republic, and place two by nature non-referendum questions such as membership in the international organizations, EU and NATO, that could be dealt by parliamentary approval or decision, combined with constitutionally relevant question of the change of the national name, that is the ID of the country. The Prime Minister Zaev wanted to mislead the ethnic Macedonians, or portion of them, who understood that the state's name will have to be changed, and or to face them with the dilemma, either better, higher economic EU standard and wealth, or change of the state's name, end of quote. For Zaev and the international community, the choice had to be an easy one for citizens, taking into consideration extremely low level of living standard of Macedonian people in Macedonia. Still, unexpectedly, the turnout was less than the required 50% of the total number of voters, and the referendum was unsuccessful. The referendum held on the 30th of September 2018 ended unsuccessfully, that is, without any decision by the people. Out of a total of 1,860,336 citizens registered in the voters list, only 666,743 citizens voted. That is 36.91% of the total number of registered citizens in the voters list. The number of unused ballots was 1,139,593. The referendum question was voted yes by 91.46%, or 609,813 citizens, while 5.65%, or 37,700 citizens, voted against it. As many as 19,221 ballots were invalid, that is 2.89%. The decision was not adopted because the condition for a successful referendum set out in the Constitution was not met. More than half of the total number of citizens registered in the voters list did not vote. That was, in fact, a major disaster for Zaev's administration and policy vis-a-vis European Union. I forgot to mention, we are broadcasting from Melbourne, Australia. So good day to everybody, not just in Australia, but around the world, and especially to Macedonian people who are living in Macedonia itself. After the complete fiasco with the referendum, this is the referendum that Macedonian government held in 2018. So after the complete fiasco with referendum 2018, in order to minimize his defeat and continue with the Prespa project, the already illegal process by definition, Zaev, that is the former Prime Minister of the Republic of Macedonia, Zaev started claiming that, or claiming it should read that the referendum was only an optional one, not an obligatory one, and that since it was undecided one, and undecided one is in quotation, the executive branch will now go to the parliament to bring it to the vote. At that moment, he demonstrated either complete absence of any legal education or and knowledge, or extreme arrogance, or perhaps both, with propensity to criminal behavior. According to the Prespa Agreement, Macedonia optionally may not organize a referendum, and in that case, the treaty is subject only to the prescribed parliamentarian or parliament procedures. But if the government chooses to go with the question on referendum, then the outcome, including the so-called undecided one, is obligatory, and the government may not go further to the parliament. In conclusion, says Professor Dr. Igor Janev, in conclusion, the decision to continue with the Prespa Agreement in the parliament was an illegal one and legally constitute a criminal behavior and the coup. C-O-U-P, exclamation mark. Clearly, any decision regarding the Prespa Agreement in the parliament after the failed referendum can only be interpreted as illegal, in brackets, or a null and void, close of brackets. At the moment when the Prespa Act with the 4 constitutional amendments came to the Macedonian parliament, the majority of votes were in the possession of the opposition party, that is V.3 For the required constitutional changes, according to the procedural rules, Zaev needed at least 80 votes, or 2/3 majority of a total of 120 members of the parliament. That is, his Social Democrats party needed 8 members from the opposition to pass the amendments. In order to solve the problem, the Social Democrats, that is the ruling party, people succeeded to corrupt 7 MPs. So Professor Igor Janev is saying that the ruling party, the Social Democrats, succeeded in corrupting 7 MPs from the opposition party, V.3, and the last one, the 80th member of the parliament, was imprisoned. MP Krsto Mukoski brought from the prison as convicted criminal for terrorism only to cast his vote and thus secure the missing vote necessary for obtaining qualified majority for passing the constitutional amendments. This operation planned and executed by the Zaev's administration was illegal and constitutes again the coup d'etat, since prisoners stripped from their immunities and accordingly all privileges cannot vote as MPs in the parliament. So as anyone may conclude, adoption of the new constitutional amendments became a comic charade. This kind of fulfillment of tasks or obligations stemming from the Prespa Agreement regarding the constitutional amendments was certainly known to all observers, including the Greek administration. Minister of the Interior, M. Chavkov, challenged the amnesty provided for MP Krsto Mukoski and 2 other convicted terrorists that cast vote in the amending procedure. One is Luben Arnaudov and the other Sashov Vasilevsky, before the Constitutional Court, and stated, quotation, the amnesty was mainly given to get Mukoski, Arnaudov and Vasilevsky to join the Social Democrats ruling party and vote in favor of renaming Macedonia. The 3 members of parliament were detained and released as the negotiations with them progressed and were finally let go just as the name change was being put to vote. This left an impression of complete violation of the rule of law in the public, a sense that only got worse with the growing judicial scandals that followed. Basically, Minister Chavkov revealed that not only one terrorist, Mukoski, former member of V.3, was released from the jail in order to vote for renaming the state, but 2 others, former members of the same party, V.3, were released from prison only to ensure successful vote in favor of the renaming of the country by constitutional amendments. 3 out of those 8 V.3 members who voted for renaming the nation, that is Krsto Mukoski, Luben Arnaudov and Sasho Vasilevsky, were convicted for storming the Macedonian Assembly in 2017 and were released from custody prison right after Zaev's speech on reconciliation and forgiveness just before voting on renaming took place. MP Mukoski, after the operation was completed, even gave a statement for the media that he now deserves the amnesty. After the voting took place and the state was renamed, he was not only released from detention and prison, but was actually awarded, according to the MP, a Milošovski with 4 million euros. 4 million euros. Namely, after the providing the provision needed victory to Zaev by helping an illegal operation of the and changing of the constitution, he was a free person and got an award. Incredible. And to be accurate, Mukoski received for his efforts more financial awards, and he was politically reinstated and got a chance for political or diplomatic advancement. All in all, Zaev's administration, headed by the DSM, even did not try to hide the operation that was supposed to be a secret one. In conclusion, says Professor Igor Janev, it was apparent to any independent media and observer that such form of police government was in fact tyranny rather than democracy. Essentially, Zaev's government smuggled constitutional changes through the Macedonian parliament, and that alone qualified the Prespa Agreement as an illegal act that illegally imposed unwanted national identity revision in the legal and constitutional system. Therefore, the Republic of North Macedonia should be qualified as an imposed illegal state name, both from the international legal aspects, that is the violation of jus cogens, and the violations of domestic constitutional law and procedures. I think we should end it there. We're trying to keep the segments short to enable you to be able to follow what we are talking about, because this is such significant information and facts and truth. So we will continue chapter 4 from where we've just finished. Very shortly, you've been listening to Silvana Pavlovska and In Focus from Melbourne, Australia. I thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to seeing you shortly.